My name is Isabella Martinez, and I'm 32 years old. 3 years ago, my sister publicly announced my bankruptcy to 200 investors at a real estate launch event, using my failure as a cautionary tale about poor financial planning. What she didn't know was that I had already purchased the $3.2 million penthouse she'd been dreaming about for 5 years, the crown jewel of the very project she was promoting. The moment the CEO revealed I was the mystery buyer, her world turned upside down in front of everyone she wanted to impress. Before I tell you exactly how this unfolded, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. I'm curious to know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Drop a comment below. I love connecting with viewers across different time zones. Now, let me take you back to that unforgettable evening at the Ritz-Carlton, where my carefully guarded secret was about to change everything between my sister and me forever. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was exactly what you'd expect for a multi-million-dollar real estate launch. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over round tables dressed in crisp white linens. 200 of the city's most influential investors, real estate moguls, and journalists filled the space, their conversations creating a sophisticated hum that meant serious money was in play. At the front of the room, a massive LED screen displayed Skyline Properties Presents, the pinnacle where luxury meets innovation. My sister Victoria stood at the podium, immaculate in her navy Armani suit, her confidence radiating as she clicked through her presentation slides. She was in her element, the successful marketing director who'd helped sell over $50 million in luxury properties this year alone. I sat in the back row, deliberately choosing a seat partially hidden behind a marble column. I'd arrived late on purpose, slipping in after the lights had dimmed for the presentation. My simple black dress and minimal jewelry were intentionally understated. Tonight wasn't about being seen, at least, not yet. As we move into our next segment, Victoria's voice rang clear through the wireless mic. I want to share something personal that illustrates why financial literacy and smart investment choices matter more than ever. My phone buzzed silently in my clutch. A text from Robert Chen, CEO of Skyline Properties. 15 minutes. Everything ready on my end. I slipped the phone back into my bag and focused on my sister. She was clicking to a new slide titled, "The Cost of Poor Planning," and my stomach tightened even though I knew what was coming. I'd been preparing for this moment for 2 weeks, ever since Robert had shown me her presentation during our final contract review. Around me, investors leaned forward, genuinely interested. Victoria had that gift. She could command a room, make people care about her narrative. It's what made her so good at her job, and what made what she was about to do even more painful. Sometimes the best lessons come from the hardest stories, she continued, her manicured finger hovering over the presentation remote, even when those stories hit close to home. Then she clicked to the next slide, and my bankruptcy papers appeared on the giant screen behind her. The bankruptcy documents on the screen took me back 3 years, to the worst period of my life. My tech startup, Next Gen Solutions, had been my everything. I'd invested my entire savings, $500,000 from years of software development work, and taken out additional loans to fund what I believed would revolutionize property management technology. The failure was swift and brutal. A major competitor released a similar product 3 months before our launch. Our primary investor pulled out, and within 6 months, I was filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The debt was crushing, $200,000 to banks, another $50,000 in credit cards, and the complete loss of my investment. The emergency family meeting happened at our parents' house on a Sunday afternoon. Victoria had driven up from the city in her new Mercedes, while I'd taken the bus because I'd sold my car to pay rent. "This is serious, Isabella," Victoria had said, spreading my financial documents across Mom's dining table like evidence in a court case. "You're 30 years old and completely broke. You need help. Let me manage your finances until you're stable again," she'd offered, her tone mixing concern with something else. Satisfaction, maybe? It's what family does. What I didn't know then was that my failure would become her favorite anecdote at networking events. My sister's bankruptcy taught me the importance of financial planning. she'd say to potential clients. It's a cautionary tale I share to help others avoid the same mistakes. For months after that, I'd been the ghost at family dinners, the one everyone tiptoed around. Victoria would share her latest sales triumph while Mom would pat my hand sympathetically. Dad would change the subject whenever careers came up. But they didn't know about the late nights I spent freelancing, rebuilding my skills, developing new code. They didn't know I was already working on something bigger. For 2 years after my bankruptcy, every family gathering followed the same script. Victoria would arrive with wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget, casually mentioning her latest promotion or bonus while asking if I needed money for rent. I closed the waterfront tower deal today, she'd announce over dinner. 8 units, $12 million total. Meanwhile, Isabella, are you still doing that freelance thing? The freelance thing was actually going quite well, but I kept quiet. My clients were paying me $150 an hour for specialized prop tech consulting. But to my family, I was still the failure living in a studio apartment, the cautionary tale in Victoria's success story. Mom would nervously refill water glasses whenever the tension rose. Dad would study his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. And Victoria would continue, oblivious or perhaps just uncaring. I've been invited to speak at the real estate summit next month, she mentioned at Thanksgiving. They want me to share insights on market trends and investment wisdom. I might mention your story, Isabella. Anonymously, of course. It really resonates with people. I nodded, smiled, and said nothing. Because by then, I was already working on something that would change everything. My new PropTech platform was in beta testing, and the results were exceeding every projection. But they didn't need to know that, not yet. Some comebacks are better served in silence, built in shadows where no one's watching, where no one can sabotage your progress with their doubts or their pity. Everything changed 6 months ago at a small tech conference in San Jose. I was presenting my new PropTech concept to a room of maybe 30 people, a far cry from the massive venues Victoria commanded. But one person in that audience mattered more than all her crowds combined. Robert Chen approached me after my presentation, his interest genuine and immediate. Your integrated IoT approach for luxury properties. It's exactly what we've been looking for, he said, handing me his business card. CEO, Skyline Properties. The same Skyline Properties that Victoria had been trying to partner with for 3 years. We met for coffee the next week, then dinner the week after. Robert wasn't interested in stories about failure or cautionary tales. He wanted to know about API integrations, user experience design, and scalability. By our third meeting, we were drafting a partnership agreement. We're launching a flagship property next year, he mentioned casually over contracts. The Pinnacle, 50 luxury units with full smart home integration. Your platform would be perfect. I kept our partnership quiet, forming my new company, NextGen PropTech, as a Delaware C Corp with Robert's investment firm as a silent partner. The paperwork was boring, the late nights were exhausting, but the monthly revenue reports were beautiful. By the time Victoria was preparing her presentation for the Pinnacle launch, I was generating $200,000 in monthly recurring revenue from enterprise clients she couldn't even dream of reaching. But the best part? She had no idea her biggest professional dream and my quiet reality were about to collide. If I had stayed silent that night at the Ritz-Carlton, I would have remained the family failure forever. It wasn't just about my ego, though I'll admit that stung. It was about the doors that would stay closed, the opportunities that would never come, the identity that would calcify around me like cement. Victoria had turned my bankruptcy into her personal brand asset. She'd given 4 keynote speeches using my failure as her opening hook. Her LinkedIn posts about learning from family mistakes had thousands of likes. She was building her reputation on the foundation of my lowest moment, and she saw nothing wrong with it. The professional cost was real. 3 potential clients had Googled me after Victoria's speeches and decided not to work with me. We heard about your situation, one had said delicately. Perhaps when you're more stable. They didn't know I had $2 million in revenue that year. They only knew Victoria's version of my story, but it was the personal cost that cut deepest. Mom still called every week to check if I was eating enough, her voice heavy with worry. Dad had offered to co-sign a car loan last month, even though I could buy the car outright. They loved me, but they saw me through Victoria's lens. Broken, needing rescue, forever catching up. The truth was, I'd already caught up. Past her, actually. My bank account held more than hers. My company was growing faster than her career, and my future was brighter than her projections. But none of that mattered if I stayed silent. If I stayed silent, I'd forever be the cautionary tale in her success story, I whispered to myself as Victoria continued her presentation. The phone buzzed again. Robert. The penthouse paperwork is ready to display. Your call when? I typed back, soon, because staying silent wasn't an option anymore. Not when the truth was so much more powerful than her fiction. The decision to buy the penthouse hadn't been about revenge, at least not entirely. 2 weeks before Victoria's launch event, I'd been in Robert's office reviewing the final PropTech integration specs when he mentioned something that stopped me cold. Your sister's been calling about Unit 5001, he said, scrolling through his tablet. The penthouse. She's inquired 6 times in the past 5 years. Even brought her financial advisor last month, but... He shrugged. The numbers didn't work. Unit 5001. I knew that number. Victoria had a vision board in her home office with a photo of that exact penthouse, torn from Architectural Digest. My 5-year goal, she'd called it. When I make senior partner, that's my reward to myself. The listing price was $3.2 million. Cash preferred. Immediate closing available. My PropTech company had just closed a Series A funding round that valued us at $15 million. My personal stake, plus the enterprise contracts, meant I had the liquidity. More importantly, I had something Victoria didn't. A partnership with Skyline that made me family, not just a customer. I'll take it, I heard myself saying. Robert looked up, surprised. The penthouse? You're serious? Dead serious. Full asking price. Cash. Close as soon as possible. He studied me for a moment, perhaps seeing something in my expression. This is about more than real estate, isn't it? It's about truth, I said simply, and timing. The contract was signed that afternoon. $3.2 million transferred from my account to escrow. The keys would be mine before Victoria's launch event, but the announcement? That would wait. Keep it confidential until the launch, I requested. I want to be there when it's announced. Robert smiled slowly, understanding dawning. You know, your sister mentioned she's using some personal anecdotes in her presentation. I'm counting on it, I replied. The penthouse wasn't just Victoria's dream. It was proof. Proof that failure isn't permanent, that silence doesn't mean surrender, and that sometimes the best response to public humiliation is patient, perfect success. Wow, can you imagine keeping such a huge secret from your own sister? Have you ever had to hide your success from someone who constantly put you down? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you're enjoying this story of sweet vindication, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. I read every single comment, and your stories inspire me to keep sharing these experiences. Now let's get back to that launch event where everything was about to change. Victoria's voice filled the ballroom with practiced authority. Let me share a personal story that illustrates why financial literacy matters more than ever. The bankruptcy documents on the screen behind her were mine, though she'd redacted the name, barely. Anyone who knew our family would recognize the details. My sister lost everything at 29, she began, clicking to the next slide showing a graph of mounting debt. Bad decisions, no financial planning, no backup strategy. I watched investors in the audience nodding knowingly. A woman at the table next to mine whispered to her companion, "This is why I hire professionals." She invested her entire life savings in a tech startup, Victoria continued, her tone mixing sympathy with condescension. No market research, no risk assessment, just pure emotional decision-making. Another click. A photo of a foreclosure notice, not mine, but the implication was clear. Now I help her monthly, Victoria said, allowing a small, sad smile. Family means supporting each other through failures, even when those failures were preventable. A man in the third row was taking notes. Several people had their phones out, probably live tweeting these insights. I recognized Jennifer Walsh from the Tribune's business section, her recorder placed prominently on her table. This is why financial literacy matters, Victoria emphasized, gesturing to the screen, to avoid becoming a burden on your loved ones. The word burden hung in the air like a slap. Around me, 200 successful people absorbed the lesson. Isabella Martinez was a failure, a cautionary tale, a burden on her successful sister. My phone lit up with another text from Robert. 5 minutes, I'm in position. I typed back, let her finish, the contrast will be better. Because Victoria didn't know she was writing my introduction. Every word she spoke was setting the stage for a reversal she'd never see coming. Victoria clicked to her next slide. Common financial mistakes that lead to bankruptcy. Each bullet point might as well have had my name next to it. Over-leveraging personal assets, she read. Ignoring market competition. Failing to maintain emergency reserves. She paused for effect. My sister made all of these mistakes. Every single one. The couple at the table in front of me exchanged knowing looks. I heard someone whisper, "That's brutal using your own sister like that." But Victoria was on a roll. The saddest part? She was brilliant at coding. If she'd just stayed in her lane, worked for an established company instead of chasing startup dreams. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Is this about you? Jennifer Walsh. The journalist had figured it out. I didn't respond. Victoria moved to her next slide, showing the Pinnacle building in all its glass and steel glory. This project represents everything my sister's venture wasn't. Carefully planned, properly funded, and built on solid foundations. Behind her, the screen shifted to showcase individual units. Every apartment here is a testament to smart investment, especially this one. She clicked again, and Unit 5001 filled the screen. The crown jewel, 3 bedrooms, wraparound terrace, smart home integration, starting at $3.2 million. Several people in the audience shifted forward, interested. I saw 2 known property investors exchanging glances. For those who truly made it, Victoria added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Those who understand that success requires more than just dreams. That's when Robert Chen walked onto the stage. Robert's entrance wasn't dramatic. He simply walked up the side steps and approached the podium. But the effect was immediate. Victoria's smile flickered with confusion. This wasn't in her program. Ms. Martinez, Robert said smoothly, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who signs $100 million deals. I apologize for interrupting, but I have an announcement that can't wait. Victoria recovered quickly, her marketing training kicking in. Of course, Mr. Chen. Everyone, our CEO, Robert Chen. Polite applause rippled through the room. Several investors sat up straighter. When Robert Chen spoke, money listened. Thank you, Victoria. You've been discussing the importance of smart investments. He pulled out a slim gold folder, the kind used for major closings. I'm pleased to announce that Unit 5001, our signature penthouse, has been sold. Victoria's smile became genuine. This was perfect for her narrative, proof that the Pinnacle was attracting serious buyers. That's wonderful news. 3.2 million is certainly a testament to 3.2 million paid in full, cash transaction, Robert clarified. Closed 2 weeks ago. The room buzzed with interest. Cash deals at that level were rare, impressive. Victoria was practically glowing, probably calculating her commission percentage. The buyer specifically requested to remain anonymous until today, Robert continued, his eyes scanning the room with theatrical precision. But given tonight's theme of smart investments and financial success, they've agreed to be revealed. Victoria nodded eagerly, completely unaware she was about to introduce her own downfall. How exciting! Is the buyer here tonight? Yes, Robert said simply. She is. The pronoun hung in the air. She. Several women in the audience straightened, wondering if they were about to be named. Victoria's eyes swept the room, landing on Patricia Steinberg, the hotel heiress, then moving to Amanda Chen, the venture capitalist. Before we reveal our buyer, Robert continued, pulling a document from the gold folder, I should mention that this purchase is part of a larger partnership. The buyer isn't just investing in a home, she's investing in the future of luxury real estate. Victoria nodded enthusiastically, still clueless. That's exactly the kind of forward-thinking investor the Pinnacle attracts. Indeed, Robert agreed. This individual has revolutionized how we think about smart home integration. Her PropTech platform will be installed in every unit of the Pinnacle. I saw the exact moment a flicker of unease crossed Victoria's face. PropTech was a small world. She knew most of the major players, and none of them were women who could drop $3.2 million in cash. In fact, Robert continued, her company has already generated over $2 million in revenue this year alone, with contracts spanning from here to Singapore. Jennifer Walsh had her phone out, probably Googling frantically. 2 tables over, Mark Davidson from Davidson Ventures was whispering urgently to his associate. Robert held up the purchase agreement, angled so the cameras could see the official seal, but not the signature. Yet. Ladies and gentlemen, our penthouse buyer is someone who understands that true success often comes after failure, that bankruptcy can be a beginning rather than an end. Victoria went very still. Someone who's been mentioned tonight, actually, Robert added with a slight smile, though perhaps not in the context she deserves. The ballroom was silent now, 200 people holding their breath. Isabella Martinez, Robert announced clearly. Would you please join us on stage? I stood slowly, letting the moment breathe. 200 heads turned in synchronized shock, tracking my movement from the back row. The silence was so complete, I could hear my heels on the marble floor as I walked toward the stage. Victoria's face was a masterclass in emotional collapse, played in slow motion. Confusion melted into disbelief, then hardened into something between rage and humiliation. Her perfectly manicured hand gripped the podium, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. There must be, she started, her voice cracking. This is some kind of mistake. No mistake, Robert said pleasantly, extending his hand to help me up the steps. Ms. Martinez closed on the penthouse 2 weeks ago. Cash payment, as I mentioned. I took my place between them, calm and composed in my simple black dress while Victoria stood frozen in her power suit. The contrast wasn't lost on the audience. But she's... Victoria turned to me, her professional mask slipping completely. You don't have that kind of money. You're bankrupt. I've been helping you with rent. You offered to help, I corrected gently, my voice carrying clearly through the wireless mic Robert had smoothly handed me. I never accepted. I haven't needed help for quite some time. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Phones appeared, subtle and not so subtle, recording everything. Jennifer Walsh wasn't even pretending to be discreet anymore, her phone held high to catch the stage. This isn't possible, Victoria whispered, but the mic caught it anyway. Robert cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss the PropTech partnership? I believe the audience would be very interested to hear about NextGen's revolutionary platform. The name hit Victoria like a physical blow. NextGen PropTech, the company she'd been trying to book meetings with for 6 months. Your NextGen PropTech? Victoria's voice pitched higher, forgetting we had an audience. The company that turned down my meeting requests? We didn't turn them down, I replied evenly. We postponed them. I wanted to avoid any conflict of interest. The irony was beautiful. Victoria had been desperately trying to partner with my company, sending emails to my CEO inbox while telling our parents I needed help buying groceries. How long? She demanded, professionalism completely abandoned. How long have you been lying to everyone? I never lied, I said, maintaining my calm while 200 people watched our family drama unfold. You never asked about my work. You were too busy telling your version of my story. Robert intervened smoothly. Ms. Martinez, Isabella, has built one of the most innovative prop tech companies in the market. We're proud to have her as both a resident and technology partner. Someone in the audience started clapping, then another. Soon, scattered applause filled the room, not overwhelming, but enough to make Victoria's face flush deeper red. The same sister you just described as a financial failure, someone called out from the crowd. I couldn't see who, but Victoria flinched like she'd been slapped. This is ridiculous, Victoria hissed, turning to Robert. She can't afford that penthouse. Check her finances. There's no way. Robert calmly pulled out his tablet, showing the screen to the audience. Wire transfer confirmation. $3.2 million. Cleared 2 weeks ago. He swiped. And here's the signed contract. Everything is completely legitimate. Victoria looked at me, her eyes wild. You did this to humiliate me. No, I said quietly but firmly. You did that yourself. I just bought a home. The audience was riveted. This was better than any presentation about market trends and investment strategies. This was real drama with millions of dollars at stake. Victoria's composure shattered completely. How did you get the money? Her voice carried across the ballroom, sharp with accusation. You were broke. You filed for bankruptcy. I saw the papers. That was 3 years ago, I replied, keeping my tone measured while hers spiraled. People rebuild, though you seemed determined to keep me frozen in that moment. You don't understand. Victoria turned to the audience desperately, as if they might take her side. She lost everything, made terrible decisions. I've been protecting her, helping her. You've been using my story without permission, I interrupted, still calm. Making yourself look generous and wise at my expense. Did you think I'd stay your cautionary tale forever? Mark Davidson stood up from his table. Ms. Martinez, Isabella, I've been trying to reach Next Gen for months. Would you have time this week to discuss our Smart City project? Before I could respond, 3 other investors were on their feet, business cards in hand. The power shift was so sudden, so complete, that Victoria actually stepped backward. This isn't how it's supposed to be, she whispered, forgetting the mic again. Robert took control of the situation. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps we should discuss the exciting prop tech integration that will make the Pinnacle the smartest luxury building in the city. But the audience wasn't interested in technology anymore. They were watching Victoria's world invert in real time. The successful sister was suddenly the desperate one. The failure was now the one everyone wanted to meet. Your boss is here, isn't he? I said quietly to Victoria. Third row, blue tie. He doesn't look happy. She glanced over and went pale. Charles Brennan, senior VP of her firm, was indeed watching with an expression that promised a very uncomfortable Monday morning meeting. Shall we continue with the presentation? Robert suggested diplomatically, but we all knew the real presentation was already over. Charles Brennan rose from his seat, his movement drawing every eye in the room. Victoria's boss was known for his poker face, but right now, his disappointment was visible from the stage. Ms. Martinez, he addressed Victoria with icy professionalism. I think we should conclude your portion of tonight's presentation. It wasn't a suggestion. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Charles, I can explain. Later, he said curtly, then turned to me. Ms. Martinez, Isabella, I apologize for any discomfort this evening may have caused. Your achievements speak for themselves. The dismissal was so thorough, so public, that several people actually gasped. Victoria stood frozen as Robert smoothly took over the microphone. Let's refocus on what brings us here tonight, Robert announced. The Pinnacle represents the future of luxury living, and with next-gen PropTech's integration, every resident will experience unprecedented smart home capabilities. He pulled up a new presentation, my presentation, the one I'd prepared for our investor meetings. Isabella, would you mind giving us a brief overview? This wasn't planned, but I understood the gift he was offering. Victoria watched helplessly as I took center stage at her event, explaining the technology that would revolutionize the building she'd been promoting. Our platform integrates security, climate, entertainment, and energy management into one seamless system, I began, muscle memory from dozens of pitches taking over. But what makes us unique is the predictive AI that learns from resident behavior. The audience leaned in, genuinely interested now. These weren't just gawkers anymore. They were potential clients and investors. I saw Jennifer Walsh typing furiously. Her story angle completely changed. Victoria tried to edge off the stage, but Charles Brennan's voice stopped her. Stay, Victoria. You should hear this. Consider it professional development. The humiliation was complete. She had to stand there, listening to her bankrupt burden of a sister capture her audience. Robert returned to the podium with the gold folder, pulling out the full documentation. I think it's time for complete transparency, he announced. With Isabella's permission, I'd like to share some details about our partnership. I nodded. The truth was my best weapon now. Isabella Martinez is not just the owner of our penthouse, Robert announced, holding up the contract. She's the CEO and founder of NextGen PropTech, valued at $15 million in their latest funding round. The number rippled through the crowd. 15 million. That was real money, serious money, the kind that commanded respect in this room. The purchase price, Robert continued, showing the wire transfer confirmation on the screen behind us, $3.2 million, paid in full, no mortgage, no payment plan, cash. He swiped to the next document. Furthermore, Skyline Properties has entered into a $10 million technology partnership with NextGen. Every unit in the Pinnacle and our next 3 developments will feature their platform as standard. Victoria made a sound, not quite a gasp, not quite a sob. $10 million. She'd been chasing a partnership worth a fraction of that. But perhaps most impressive, Robert added, his tone warming, Isabella accomplished this just 3 years after bankruptcy. She didn't inherit wealth. She didn't marry into it. She built it through innovation, determination, and strategic silence. Mark Davidson was on his feet again. That's the kind of founder we invest in, he called out. Isabella, my card, please. We need to talk. Suddenly, business cards were coming from everywhere. Investors who'd ignored Victoria's networking attempts for years were climbing over each other to reach me. The woman Victoria had painted as a failure was now the most valuable connection in the room. This partnership will revolutionize luxury real estate, Robert continued, now fully in CEO mode. And it started because Isabella had the vision to see beyond traditional property management. Jennifer Walsh raised her hand. Miss Martinez, Isabella, can you comment on your sister's portrayal of your bankruptcy? The room went silent again, waiting. Everyone fails, I said simply. The difference is whether you let someone else define that failure or you define your own comeback. Victoria's face crumpled. She understood now. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. The shift in the room's energy was palpable. Where Victoria had commanded attention through position and presentation, I now held it through proven success. Major investors were approaching the stage, not even pretending to be subtle about their interest. Patricia Steinberg, the hotel heiress Victoria had spent 2 years courting, walked straight past her to hand me a card. We're renovating 12 properties next year. I want NextGen in all of them. I'm so proud of my sister, Victoria suddenly announced, her voice artificially bright as she tried to salvage something from the wreckage. This is exactly the kind of success story that— Please don't, I said quietly but clearly. You don't get to claim this. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's mouth opened, but Charles Brennan's expression killed whatever words she'd planned. Let's discuss this privately later, I added, giving her an out she didn't deserve but our parents would appreciate. This is a business event, not family therapy. Robert smoothly redirected attention. We have a brief video showcasing the NextGen integration. While that plays, Isabella will be available for individual conversations. I stepped off the stage into a crowd that parted respectfully, then closed around me with business cards and investment offers. Behind me, I heard Victoria trying to resume her presentation. her voice shaky and unconvincing. The market projections for smart home technology, she began, but half the audience was already moving toward me. Thomas Chen from Chen Ventures pushed through the crowd. 15 million valuation seems low. We could triple that in a Series B round. My assistant will set up a meeting, I replied, accepting his card while mentally calculating how many of these connections Victoria had spent years failing to make. Someone tapped my shoulder. Jennifer Walsh stood there with her recorder. The bankruptcy to billionaire angle is incredible. Exclusive interview? Millionaire, I corrected with a slight smile. Let's not exaggerate. And yes, we can talk. Behind us, Victoria's presentation limped to a conclusion with barely 20 people still paying attention. The crown jewel of her career had become the stage for her professional humiliation. And I hadn't even mentioned that she'd been rejected as a buyer for the penthouse 5 times. Can you believe that moment? 3 years of being called a failure, and then this. I'm curious. What would you have said to Victoria on that stage? Let me know in the comments. Your perspectives always amaze me, and honestly, they help me process these experiences. Also, if you think someone needs to hear this story about silent comebacks and setting boundaries, please share it with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics makes all the difference. We're almost at the best part where I finally set things straight with my sister. The next morning, Victoria arrived at my office. Yes, I had an actual office now, with employees and everything. She'd texted 12 times and called 6 before I finally agreed to meet. You humiliated me, she began before even sitting down, her designer bag clutched like armor. In front of my boss, my clients, everyone who matters. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, studying her. Even in crisis, Victoria looked polished, hair perfect, makeup flawless, outfit coordinated. But her eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. You humiliated yourself, I replied calmly, by using my personal financial crisis as your professional content without permission. It was just context. People need real examples. Then use your own failures. I don't have any! The words exploded out of her, raw and honest for maybe the first time in years. And there it was, the truth beneath all her posturing. Victoria had never failed because she'd never really risked anything. She'd taken the safe path, the corporate ladder, the conventional success. My bankruptcy terrified her because it showed how quickly things could fall apart. You should have told me, she accused, switching tactics. About the company, the money, the penthouse. We're family. Family doesn't parade your lowest moments for professional gain, I countered. Family doesn't need you to stay broken to feel secure about themselves. I was trying to help you. No, you were helping yourself to my story. There's a difference. She stood abruptly, pacing to the window overlooking the city. 20 floors up, my office had a view she'd always dreamed of. Charles put me on probation, she admitted quietly. Said my judgment was questionable. That using family tragedy for marketing showed poor boundaries. I waited. This wasn't my problem to solve. The other partners are questioning my ethics. 3 clients called to express concern about confidentiality. Her voice cracked. You've ruined everything I worked for. No, I said firmly. You did that yourself. I just stopped letting you use my failure as your stepping stone. Victoria turned from the window, tears finally breaking through her perfect makeup. So what now? You're successful and I'm finished? Is that your revenge? This isn't revenge, I said, pulling out a folder from my desk. But it is consequence. I slid the document across to her, a cease and desist letter from my attorney. You will stop using my bankruptcy, my story, or any details of my financial history in your presentations, social media, or professional communications, I read from my copy. You will remove all existing content that references my situation from your LinkedIn, Twitter, and company materials. Her hands shook as she read it. You're threatening legal action against your own sister? I'm setting a boundary, I corrected. One I should have set 3 years ago. This is ridiculous. I made you sympathetic. People felt inspired. People felt superior, I interrupted. You gave them permission to look down on me so they'd look up to you. She sank into the chair across from my desk, the fight draining out of her. What am I supposed to do? My entire speaking portfolio is built around that narrative. Build a new one. Maybe one where you're the person who learns and grows, not the savior of your disaster sister. I don't know how to fail, she whispered. And for the first time in years, I saw my actual sister, not the polished professional she'd become. Then learn, I said, not unkindly. It's surprisingly liberating. She looked at the cease and desist again. If I sign this, if I agree to everything, can we still be sisters? We can be sisters without you being my supervisor or savior, I replied. But that means treating me as an equal, not a cautionary tale. Victoria's pen hovered over the signature line. Mom and Dad will adjust. They already are. Dad called this morning to congratulate me on the penthouse. Mom wants to see it. She signed the document, her signature shaky but legal. For what it's worth, she said quietly, the penthouse was always perfect for you. The professional fallout for Victoria was swift and thorough. Within a week, Charles Brennan had reassigned her major accounts to other team members. The official reason was portfolio restructuring, but everyone knew the truth. Her speaking engagement at the real estate summit was quietly canceled. The organizer called me personally to apologize and offer me the slot instead. I declined, but recommended another female entrepreneur who'd actually earned her success story. Victoria's LinkedIn posts about mentoring through failure were deleted after the cease and desist, leaving gaps in her carefully curated professional image. She went from posting daily to radio silence, her influence evaporating like morning mist. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. The Tribune ran a feature. From bankruptcy to penthouse, the next-gen CEO who refused to stay down. Jennifer Walsh's article was surprisingly balanced, focusing on the technology rather than the family drama. Mom called after reading it. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, hurt coloring her voice. "Would you have believed me over Victoria's version?" I replied gently. The silence that followed was answer enough. Dad was more direct. "Your sister's having a hard time. Maybe you could—" "No," I interrupted. "I won't manage her emotions or soften her consequences. That's the dynamic that created this mess." The family group chat, once dominated by Victoria's achievements, went quiet. Our cousin Sarah finally broke the silence. "Isabella, saw the article. Amazing comeback. Maybe we should all stop sharing just the highlight reels." 3 months later, Victoria took a lateral move to a smaller firm, starting fresh where her reputation wasn't tainted by the Pinnacle incident. She texted me about it, professional, distant, appropriate. "Congratulations on the fresh start," I replied. "Thanks. I'm learning that starting over isn't the end of the world." "No," I agreed. "Sometimes it's the beginning of who you're supposed to be." 6 months after the Pinnacle launch, NextGen PropTech had expanded to 50 employees across 3 offices. Our Series B funding round closed at a $45 million valuation, exactly triple what Thomas Chen had predicted. The tech press couldn't get enough of the story. The quiet comeback became a Harvard Business Review case study. Speaking requests poured in, but I was selective. No family drama, just business insights and resilient strategies. Victoria, I heard through family channels, was rebuilding steadily. She'd stopped the inspirational speaking circuit entirely, focusing on actual real estate transactions. Her new firm appreciated her work ethic without the performative storytelling. At Thanksgiving, we sat at opposite ends of Mom's table. Polite, civil, careful. She complimented the wine I brought without mentioning its price. I asked about her new office without comparing it to mine. "I saw NextGen won the Smart Building Innovation Award," she offered over dessert. "Thank you. Congratulations on the Riverside Commerce deal." Mom beamed at our civility, mistaking it for closeness. But boundaries aren't walls. They're the framework that makes healthy relationships possible. Later, Loading the dishwasher together, the only moment we were alone, Victoria said quietly, "I'm in therapy, learning about why I needed you to be failing." I handed her another plate, considering. "That's good. I hope it helps." "Do you think we'll ever be close again?" "We were never close," I replied honestly. "You were the successful one and I was the project. Maybe now we can figure out who we actually are to each other." She nodded, understanding that this too was a kind of beginning. 1 year later, I stood in my penthouse, watching the city lights sparkle below. The space was everything Victoria had dreamed of: floor-to-ceiling windows, Italian marble, that wraparound terrace. But it felt like mine, not a trophy I'd stolen from her. The doorbell chimed through my integrated next-gen system. "Isabella, your 7 p.m. appointment has arrived," the AI announced. I'd started a monthly dinner series for entrepreneurs who'd failed and were rebuilding. Tonight's group included a former CEO who'd lost everything in a fraud scandal where he was the victim, a restaurant owner recovering from pandemic bankruptcy, and a young woman whose app startup had spectacularly imploded. "The view is incredible," Sarah, the app founder, whispered. "The view is nice," I agreed, "but the real value is in the climb back up." We spent 3 hours sharing strategies, resources, and sometimes just silence that understood. No one used anyone else's story for personal gain. Everyone owned their failures and their recoveries equally. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Saw the WSJ article about your mentorship program. Proud of you." I texted back. "Thanks. How's the new project?" "Challenging. Good challenging." Our relationship had found its level: professional respect, careful kindness, appropriate distance. We'd never be the sisters from heartwarming movies, but we'd learned to coexist without exploitation. As my guests left, each carrying a little more hope than they'd arrived with, I realized this was success, not the penthouse or the valuation, but the ability to lift others without standing on their shoulders. 3 years after that night at the Ritz-Carlton, I've learned truths that no business school teaches and no family dinner prepares you for. Failure isn't an ending, it's data. My bankruptcy taught me more about business than my computer science degree ever did. It showed me who I was when everything external was stripped away. The answer wasn't pretty, but it was real. And real is where rebuilding begins. Never let anyone else narrate your story, especially someone who benefits from you being the cautionary tale. Victoria needed me to stay broken because my failure validated her choices. The moment I refused to play that role, her entire narrative collapsed. Family doesn't mean no boundaries. It means loving someone enough to stop enabling their toxic patterns. Victoria and I are better sisters now, with careful distance between us, than we ever were when she was helping me. Silent progress beats loud promises every time. While Victoria was announcing my failures, I was coding until 3 a.m. While she was building her brand on my bankruptcy, I was building a company. The work matters more than the narrative. Respect can't be inherited or gifted, it must be earned. And sometimes earning it means standing on a stage in front of everyone who dismissed you and calmly claiming your worth. The penthouse is beautiful, but it's just square footage. The real victory was that morning in my office when Victoria signed the cease and desist. That was the moment I stopped being her supporting character and became the protagonist of my own story. Your comeback doesn't need an announcement. It needs a plan, patience, and the courage to succeed in silence while others profit from your failure. When you finally reveal your progress, make sure it's undeniable. Success is sweeter when nobody sees it coming. Today, as I write this, Victoria and I have found our rhythm. We exchange holiday cards with genuine but careful warmth. She attended NextGen's IPO celebration, clapping sincerely when we rang the opening bell. I sent flowers when she made partner at her new firm, earned through real work, not borrowed stories. At our parents' 40th anniversary party last month, someone asked about our relationship. "We're sisters," Victoria said simply. "We each have our own paths." "And our own stories," I added. She nodded. a small smile acknowledging the boundary. We've learned that love doesn't require merged identities or shared narratives. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the space to fail and succeed on their own terms. The penthouse became more than just Victoria's dream that I achieved first. It became the symbol of a larger truth that our dreams often look identical until we achieve them, and then we realize they were never really the same at all. She wanted the penthouse as proof of success. I needed it as proof of resurrection. Last week, a young woman reached out. Her brother had been using her eating disorder recovery as content for his wellness coaching business. How do I make him stop without destroying our family? She asked. Boundaries don't destroy families, I told her. They reveal which relationships were built on exploitation versus genuine love. The ones worth saving will survive the truth. She sent me a message yesterday. I served him the cease and desist. He's furious, but I feel free for the first time in years. Freedom. That's what boundaries give us. Not walls, but freedom. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges to healthier relationships. They're the architecture of respect, built one firm no at a time. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been underestimated by family or had to make a silent comeback, I see you. Drop a comment and share your experience. I read every single one. What boundaries did you have to set with toxic family members? How did you reclaim your narrative from someone who was profiting from your pain? And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. I share real stories about success, failure, and everything in between. Remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. You are not anyone's cautionary tale. You're your own success story waiting to be written.